Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Also, if you are a subscriber, turn on the notifications, hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I am here each week, usually Tuesday and Thursday, to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting news. And on today's show, with the SEC Championship being on Saturday, I want to break down a couple of recruiting battles between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs, and they will consistently fight for some of the top recruits heading down the home stretch of the 2022 recruiting cycle, with National Signing Day, the first signing day, coming up less than 2 weeks now. The traditional signing period is in February, of course, but the early signing period starts on December 15th, and a couple of prospects are still considering both the Tide and the Bulldogs. Now I'm going to talk about those guys on today's show, but before I get an opportunity to look at those prospects and where their recruitments currently stand, I do want to provide a quick recruiting update, as Alabama's assistant coaches are currently hitting the road, getting the opportunity to check out some of the Crimson Tide's top targets at their home, inside their homes, getting opportunity to spend some time with their families. And one of those guys who Alabama was able to see on Wednesday is four-star defensive back Earl Little Jr. out of American Heritage High School in Plantation, Florida. Alabama's defensive back Coach Jay Valai made that trip to Plantation to see the Crimson Tide's, one of the Crimson Tide's top defensive targets in the 2022 recruiting class. Of course, Earl Little has gone on record several times and said Alabama is his favorite. He told me that he still felt the Crimson Tide was number one after he took an official visit to the University of Alabama during the month of November. So the Crimson Tide looked to be sitting pretty with Earl Little Jr. Got an opportunity to send Coach Valai down to spend some time with Earl Little. And Earl Little also spoke glowingly about his relationship with Jay Valai. When I talked to him after that official visit, he told me they talked with Valai basically every day, and he told me they had a great relationship with them. Also a great relationship with Nick Saban. Saban plans to visit Plantation next week, as he gets an opportunity to, I think, to visit a lot of recruits next week after the SEC Championship. But he wasn't the only Alabama assistant coach in Plantation. The Crimson Tide's outside linebacker coach Chaz also made the trip. He had an opportunity to check out Little's teammate and four-star defensive end Marvin Jones Jr. Check in on Marvin Jones, as he did join Little when he officially visited Alabama in November as well. Jones said he felt at home when he visited Alabama on that official visit. He also said that the Crimson Tide were going to be listed in his top five, and they were listed in his top five that he released recently. But so are the Georgia Bulldogs, and that basically leads us into our discussion of Alabama and Georgia on the recruiting trail with the SEC Championship going on. I know a lot of recruits are going to be focused on this game, not only the prospects who are verbally committed to both of those programs, but also the guys who are still considering them heading down the home stretch of the 2022 recruiting cycle, starting with Marvin Jones Jr. He is still considering the Tide and the Bulldogs as well. Looking at it from a defensive perspective, you can't really judge any prospect who is basically evaluating Georgia at the moment, because you see that great defense that they have. You see that great defensive front seven and what they can do under Kirby Smart, who is a defensive-minded coach. So Marvin Jones is definitely still considering both of those programs. I feel Alabama is in a great position with them. I think they're going to be heavily involved with this decision in the future. But Jones isn't the only prospect who is still considering both schools at the moment. You also have a four-star offensive lineman out of St. John Bosco High School in Ernest Greene, who's considering both programs. He's actually visiting Alabama right now as I speak to you on the process. He's taking a trip to Tuscaloosa to check out the Crimson Tide after officially visiting Tuscaloosa a couple of weeks ago. He was on campus when the Crimson Tide took on the Arkansas Razorbacks for an official visit. He got back today. According to his Instagram, he's currently on campus right now. So the Crimson Tide have a wonderful opportunity to get him back on campus as they continue to try to push for another offensive lineman in the 2022 recruiting class, although they do have commitments from four-star offensive linemen in Elijah Pritchett, Tyler Booker, and also Dane Shore. So Ernest Greene is a guy to pay close attention to. He will also be in attendance when the Crimson Tide take on the Bulldogs this Saturday in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. So Ernest Greene is a guy to pay very close attention to. He did announce on Twitter today that he will announce some type of announcement on tomorrow at 12 o'clock Pacific time. It is unclear what that announcement could be. It could be a top school list. I'm leaning more towards it being a final two or something like that, which could be Alabama and Georgia. So I'm leaning more towards him possibly dropping some type of top school list. So that is just another announcement or update to keep your eyes on. Of course, we will keep you updated over at touchdownalabama.com. The Crimson Tide and the Bulldogs are also still pushing for four-star athlete Isaiah Bond out of Bruford High School in Bruford, Georgia. Of course, Bond verbally decommitted from Florida after they fired Dan Mullen. He also decommitted after taking an unofficial visit to Alabama. So the Crimson Tide look to be the favorite for Bun at the moment, but Georgia is a school who is still pushing for the prospect as well. Of course, he is an in-state target for them, with them being from Bruford, Georgia. They have continued to recruit him along with the Crimson Tide's four-star defensive back commit and Isaiah Bond's teammate Jake Pope. So the Crimson Tide are going to have to try to battle it out with Georgia, as well as the school who Bun was once verbally committed to with Florida, trying to come back into the mix with them having a head coach now in Billy Napier. Of course, Isaiah Bond is one of the fastest prospects in the 2022 recruiting class, a lengthy prospect who could be a defensive back or wide receiver at the next level. I truly believe he wants to be a wide receiver once he hits the collegiate level. I think Alabama's going to give him an opportunity to be either a wide receiver or defensive back. I think he brings a lot to the table at both of those positions, but he's going to be a prospect who will most likely choose from Georgia, Florida, and Alabama once he makes a decision, hopefully or by National Signing Day, which is on December 15th. Another prospect who I'm going to talk about today is four-star wide receiver Chaz Preston out of St. James High School, Louisiana. One of the most physical wide receivers in the 2022 recruiting class, has the Tide, Georgia, Texas, and LSU listed in his top four. I am pretty sure the Crimson Tide are going to send a coach to Louisiana to check out Chaz Preston here pretty soon. Texas has already sent a good amount of coaches, including their head coach, Steve Sarkisian. An interesting fact about Texas pushing for Chaz Preston, I feel that Texas is heavily involved with Preston because of Sarkisian and some of the Crimson Tide coaches who moved on to Texas during the last offseason. I remember Chaz Preston's dad, Sean, told me that there was a huge reason why Texas was still heavily involved, because of the relationship that Chaz Preston was able to build with Steve Sarkisian during the time at the University of Alabama. So Texas is still a huge player in Chaz Preston's recruitment. So is Georgia. So is the Crimson Tide as well. So that is another one of those recruiting battles to pay attention to, with Preston being one of the top uncommitted wide receivers in the country heading into National Signing Day. The last guy I want to talk about is a guy who Alabama fans are really familiar with. He is an in-state product out of Faith Academy in Mobile, Alabama, and I am talking about Shermar James, the four-star linebacker who could be listed as an athlete, easily does it all for Faith Academy High School. Does a little bit of everything, like I said, but his natural position is going to be inside linebacker at the next level, in my opinion. Stands at 6'3", a lengthy guy who can play all over the football field. I said earlier they could be easily listed as an athlete, and I think that's just the versatility that he brings to the football field. But he decommitted from Florida, similar to Isaiah Bond. Florida is still trying to get him back on board, and so is Georgia trying to get him to Athens, and Alabama trying to keep him inside the state. And similar to Bond, I think he has basically the top three, the same three schools to choose from at the end of his recruitment. When you take a look at Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, the Crimson Tide's defensive coordinator Pete Golding, Alabama's outside linebacker coach Towson Siri have constantly told James that they were not going to pull off on him. They were going to continue to recruit him. They were going to continue to stay in contact with him, although he was verbally committed to Florida, and I'm pretty sure they have not cooled off on him. They want to get him in the fold in this 2022 recruiting class. He is still keeping his options open after backing off his commitment from the Florida Gators, has visited Georgia and has visited Alabama as well, and has also taken visits to Florida State even recently. So Shermar James is a guy I think Alabama fans are already paying attention to, because because they want to keep this in-state talent inside the state of Alabama. But those are the prospects who I want to talk about today in terms of guys who will be paying close attention to the SEC championship game as the Alabama Crimson Tide take on the Georgia Bulldogs in arguably the biggest game this season. So I know Alabama fans will be tuned in to that matchup. We will be tuned in as well. Of course, me and John Ivory will be on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page for the live watch party of the SEC championship game. Be sure to tune in to that live watch party as you watch the game live on CBS. But as always, thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page on The Process. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, leave a like as well. If you are a subscriber, hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. Then head over to touchdowналabama.com, pick up your subscription. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber only articles, get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue, also get an opportunity to read all of our in-depth scouting reports on each hot commit and each recruiting class. Then head to the Google Play Store if you have the Android device, or to the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device, to download the Touchdown Alabama app so breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama.
Process.